Welcome back, everyone. It's Tuesday afternoon, July 19th, 2022. Thanks for watching and listening to the Ed Morrissey Show podcast. Got a lot of news that's happening today. We already have quite a few stories up at hotair.com. Got a great show for you today, too. We've got Mark Cavaliere from Southwest Coalition for Life, who is going to be doing something unusual today in Las Cruces, New Mexico. And you'll have to listen in on Mark's conversation here to find out the big reveal about what they're doing in response to the Jackson Women's Health Clinic moving from Mississippi, where they just lost the case in the Dobbs decision, to Las Cruces. Southwest Coalition for Life is, obviously, it's a pro-life organization. It exists to help women go through all of the different options that they have. So be sure to stick around for that. And of course, we're talking with Andrew Malcolm today about some of the top stories this week. And that's a great conversation as well. In the meantime, we've got a lot of great things going on at Hot Air and some very interesting stories. I think maybe the most interesting story so far this morning has been the attack on Mayra Flores, who won a special election, I should say, in Texas's Rio Grande Valley for a seat that had always been occupied by a Democrat. She's the first Hispanic Republican to hold that seat. She's the first Latina Republican to win an election in Texas, I believe. And so she's obviously someone who is a particular focus of concern for Texas Democrats. Now, because of the redistricting, she's actually running for election again, because a special election only takes you through the end of this term. She's running for election again in Vicente Gonzalez's district. Vicente Gonzalez hired a blogger who decided that he was going to go after Mayra Flores in some pretty despicable terms, called her Miss Frijolx 2022. He has made derogatory comments about her sex, about her ethnicity. And this is a guy who is well known for these types of attacks. I mean, so they hired this guy. They paid him $1,200. And immediately, I think, as Mark Caputo from NBC News reported, he made at least 21 references to Flores and Frijolx. And so, which I wrote about this morning. And I said, well, that's about one step away from calling someone a beaner. And if the shoe was on the other foot, partisan-wise, this would be a national, four siren story. Kudos to Mark, by the way, who's a good reporter and does a lot of really good reporting. He used to be at Politico, now he's at NBC News, for making this, for reporting on this. We'll see how many other media outlets want to shine a light on that. Another interesting development today actually happened last night. Stephen Colbert went after Joe Biden and his trip to Saudi Arabia, the fist bump with Mohammed bin Salman, and went after Biden's age. And I wonder whether or not this is maybe a turning point for late night comics who have been shying away from attacks on Biden, just like they spent 8 years shying away from attacks on Barack Obama. And I don't think it's an interesting inflection point if it turns out to be that. Bill Maher has been doing this for months, by the way. Bill Maher made that transition quite a long time ago. But the other late night comics have been more interested in covering Joe Biden as in covering for Joe Biden. Jimmy Kimmel's assistance in getting Biden across the finish line 5 weeks ago on his show, I think, is a lot more emblematic of the way late night has been treating Biden specifically, but Democrats in general. Maybe the Saudi Arabia trip is an inflection point. We'll see, but it's an interesting clip to watch. Otherwise, we're covering a lot of other things. Biden's argument on gas prices. He wants credit for them dropping 50 cents over the last 34 days, but apparently doesn't want to accept responsibility for them going up $2.50 in the previous 510 days. So I deconstruct that. Actually deconstructed that on Twitter, Monday afternoon. But I decided to return back to it because I wanted to make sure that people understood that there was more to this and where the actual issue is. The reason why prices are declining is because there is less demand. And the reason why there's less demand? Probably because the prices got too high. And we finally hit a balancing point between supply, demand, and price. That's not going to last long, however. The Washington Post over the weekend made sure to warn everybody, that little price lull that you're seeing, don't count on it. You can read my post on that. We got a lot of other great stuff coming up, by the way. Jazz is back. Jazz Shaw is back. We should get him on the show here. I'm very happy to see Jazz back. It's a little less work for me now that Jazz is back. And he's got a lot of great stuff going on. Alla Pundit's got some great stuff going on. John Sexton has a post going up, and it should be up about the time that you get this podcast episode in your hot little hands, on Germany rethinking their decision to shut down their nuclear plants. We should be rethinking our decision to not expand our nuclear power generation here in the United States. We are shutting down. I think we shut down San Onofre, for instance, in California, but that was an aging out process. It probably could have stayed open, but what we need to do is we need to replace those aging out reactors with brand new reactors, new technology, safer technology, more reliable, less waste. That's the type of direction that you would want to go in if you had a coherent energy policy. Unfortunately, as I also talk about later today, probably go up just a little bit after this podcast drops, we don't have an intelligent, rational energy policy. Amos Hochstein, who is Joe Biden's energy advisor at the White House, makes it clear on CNN this morning that, of course, the Biden administration is disincentivizing long-term investment in oil and natural gas production because they want to phase out fossil fuels altogether. So they're not going to incentivize the type of investment that would actually produce a lot more oil, a lot more gasoline, and would actually address the demand that is developing for energy ahead of developing whatever green energy alternatives they think is going to replace this, and which is very clear now, is not even close to being a replacement. Certainly not scalable, and certainly not at the level necessary. And it won't be for many, many years to come. So that is what's coming up at hotair.com. Read and watch that, as well as watch the podcast. Welcome back to the Ed Morrissey Show podcast. Joining me is Mark Cavaliere. We're going to be talking about a new women's health organization in Las Cruces that is going to be it's going to be sort of a surprise for the for the abortion industry. And joining us to talk about that is Mark Cavaliere. Mark, thanks for being with us today. First off, tell us what your organization is and what's happening there in Las Cruces.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you again for having me. It's this, we're with the Southwest Coalition for Life. We started in Las Cruces, New Mexico back in 2014 when we actually faced a different abortion facility coming into our city. And then we started our full-time nonprofit, some real strategic outreach. And after 2 years, they actually shut down for financial trouble, for suddenly not getting enough patients, because we were able to help women to that degree that it was no longer profitable for them. And so then we expanded to the larger El Paso area and have really gotten involved with, doing more for women's healthcare in a way that supports womanhood and motherhood. And now we hear the news that this case from the center of the Dobbs versus Jackson case that overturned Roe versus Wade, this controversial abortion business, the last facility in Mississippi is shutting down, and they're moving to, of course, Las Cruces, New Mexico. So we're going to be having a big announcement to kind of surprise them with what we're doing right next door. Wow.
Well, this is exciting, and probably not so much for the abortion clinic that's going to be opening up there. But yeah, the big rally, we're going to put this up on Tuesday. So, try to get it up early. So, but this is, you're going to have a rally there. It's going to be, you're going to have pro-life leaders coming in from around the country to speak at this rally, right?
Oh, that's correct. Yeah. David B. Wright, who's the founder of 40 Days for Life, which has become a global movement.
Oh, yeah.
The pro-life movement. He'll be there as a good friend of ours, a close mentor. Leah Jacobson, who started these Guiding Star centers, the National Guiding Star Project, really to be kind of a pro-life alternative to Planned Parenthood, of doing, not just helping a woman choose life and then letting her back out into the same medical system that kind of failed her and got her into that situation in the first place. Right. But really saying, let's actually have truly holistic women's health care. She's really worked hard to define this. She's just put out a book recently, Holistic Feminism, basically, healing the identity crisis caused by the women's movement, to really say, we need to do more to support women. And that's what we're going to be bringing right next door.
Holistic feminism. That's with a W.
Correct. Holistic mean holism, whole person, mind, body, soul. So often what Roe versus Wade has told women for the last 50 years is that in order to be successful, you have to alter, suppress, and destroy the normal healthy functions of your natural body in order to be definitions of success that are really based on, male norms in the workplace. And we're saying that shouldn't be the case, that we should need to shift that expectation to employers, to universities, to society to be the ones to change and conform to better support women.
Well, yes. And, this is some of the things that we just got done talking with a friend of mine, Peter Ngemi, who works with pregnancy centers in Massachusetts, where Senator Elizabeth Warren is from. And Senator Elizabeth Warren has had a lot to say about pregnancy centers of late. And I definitely want to get your take on this, because you have experience with them. So does Peter. Peter works with them. He helps fundraise for them. He's a part-time blogger, but he's very committed to the pro-life cause. And Mark, as are you, of course. And I found it, I'm sort of aghast, I think, at Elizabeth Warren's accusations that this is somehow some sort of bait and switch, that this is an exploitation of women, and that somehow Planned Parenthood isn't. The pregnancy centers, I've done some events and stuff like that. I wouldn't say that I'm an expert in this, but the people that I've talked to who work in these places, and the people that I've talked to who've gone through these places, say these are places that give women the full range of options. And you talk about holistic feminism, this book that you're going to be working with. That to me is much more of a holistic approach for women than just the single, contraception, at first, and abortion on the back end sort of approach that Planned Parenthood takes.
Right. And that's the thing is, Planned Parenthood has essentially hijacked even the phrase women's health care is now gotten to a point where that's equated with contraception and abortion. Let's just suppress the things of our natural body that define womanhood. And we're here to say, your body's not broken. It's good. It's sacred. We used to revere, and really I have felt compelled as a man that, Roe versus Wade has also created this culture in men that has objectified and used and abused women essentially for sex on demand without consequence. And every woman listening to this has been on the receiving end of that in some way, for which I apologize. And so we need to do better. We need to step up and say, our women deserve better. We need to actually love them, support them, and not subject them to really these traumatic experiences of these traumatic chemical abortion procedures and invasive surgeries to suffer the consequences of men.
Yeah, and I think that this should be a huge discussion in feminist circles, and I think it has been in the past, right? And I think that what's happened though is that it's been eclipsed by the defense of abortion for the last 49 years since Roe. But I think that there's been discussion about this, even maybe perhaps just sotto voce, among feminist groups, about the exploitative aspects of abortion on demand when it comes to male sexuality. And I'm frankly surprised that this is not something that comes up more often. They talk about this being, well, it's a woman's body, it's a woman's choice. It's also, it's really a strictly a woman's burden. And so, that to me, I think, is something that really should be explored more fully from feminists. We're seeing it from pro-life feminists, right? And there are such a thing as pro-life feminists. And again, holistic feminists. You can hold that book up again.
Yeah, that's what this is. Yeah, this is the pro-life version of let's actually respect womanhood and understand. And it's interesting because we're getting to a point where those who are defending abortion, and really those who profit from abortion, can't even define what a woman is.
Yes.
And we're here to say that no, there are things that make women sacrosanct. They have these superpowers of fertility and gestation and ovulation and lactation that are so unique And if we're not very specifically saying, this is really the foundation of society is through womanhood, and they're not even willing to define that, we're here to say, no, that is something that we need to have a very clear focus on. What is natural, what is healthy, in a way that really supports, even organic, if you want to say, that doesn't just say, let's just come in and oppress this with, class 1 carcinogens and, surgeries that are just really, not only is it obviously traumatic for the child who doesn't survive the process, but for the woman, for the hormonal impact on her body, on her mind.
Right. I'm just going to share this as an aside because it's only tangential to what we're talking about. But I saw a headline today, and I think I actually saw it over the weekend. It said something to the effect of 43% of people who menstruate on a regular basis report that their menstruation intensified after receiving a COVID-19 vaccine. Wow. I'm thinking people who menstruate regularly are women.
Right.
It's a hell of a lot easier to just say women, but I mean, it's this sort of deconstruction, this abandonment of fundamental truth, right, is part of this deconstructing the female, so that all of these are so that you can impose more and more of these societal expectations on people who menstruate on a regular basis.
Right.
I was laughing about that all weekend long, Mark.
And what a disservice to women that are now not able to receive true, authentic health care because of, this virtue signaling, that so many are doing. And it's really a disservice. Even right now, what really breaks my heart is you have all this misinformation and fear mongering and intentional political misinformation regarding natural miscarriage. My wife and I have experienced 2 natural miscarriages, very heartbreaking.
Right. Yeah.
And they're trying to equate an induced intentional abortion with a natural miscarriage, and saying that women are now going to be jailed and prosecuted for miscarriage, and it's gotten to the point where even women who go through this natural and really heartbreaking experience, they don't get the dignity that otherwise I think society we should be providing them, because there's this fear that, well, if we acknowledge that what they're going through, that would be dignifying in the life in the womb. And so Yep. That's one of the things too. We have a really good miscarriage program for women who've gone through that and don't know where else to go. And really just saying, women deserve better than abortion.
They do. Now you're going to have a new facility in Las Cruces. I'm not sure that we got this mentioned yet, but let's go ahead and talk about this now.
Yeah.
The Jackson Women's Health Organization is moving from Mississippi to Las Cruces. It's going to be renamed the Las Cruces Women's Health Organization. It's the same group though. Yes. The Southwest Coalition for Life has new offices in Las Cruces, so maybe you can tell us exactly where they landed.
Right. So this is the part of the big announcement for tonight, for Tuesday the 19th. And so if you're hearing it here, you're getting a little bit early. But yes, they just came into it's 2918 Hillrise Drive in Las Cruces. It's right across the street from a children's clinic. It's a stone's throw away from a daycare, and it's just less than a quarter mile from Hillrise Elementary School. There's a family clinics. There's churches right within a quarter mile of this area. This is a real wholesome area. The city of Las Cruces itself, Las Cruces means the crosses. It's the city right. of the crosses. This is a very vibrant, family-based community who already went through this once and took a stand and said, we're not, even though Santa Fe and Albuquerque kind of dictate the political situation in New Mexico, which allows abortion up to the moment of delivery for any reason, even minors without parental consent in the state of New Mexico, that had been kind of, stayed up in the northern part of the state until they're now, with the overturn of Roe, they're looking for where can I continue to do unregulated abortion. And we're seeing this Diane Zerzis with the Jackson Women's Health Organization. She was already shut down in Alabama once, had 76 pages of health code violations, and they sent 3 women to the hospital in one day. 1 woman go to the intensive care unit. And then in Mississippi, was cited for not having a safe and sanitary environment for women. And so she's being driven out state after state. And now because of, the virtue signaling of our governor and our legislative here in New Mexico, they're welcoming this really as a destination for abortion tourism for the nation. We're going right. from 5 abortion facilities in the state to more than doubling that, to almost, it looks like possibly 14 now in the state of New Mexico, fairly rural state. And now the rest of the state is standing up to say, we need to do something more at the local level to help women, because we can't tolerate this.
And so the Southwest Coalition for Life is going to be set up. So it's okay to say this, right?
Yeah, yes, to go for it.
Right next door to the newly minted Las Cruces Women's Health Organization. You guys are going to be right next door, providing all of the other options that the Las Cruces Women's Health Organization will not provide, does not want to provide. And I mean, I think that this is brilliant. I think that it will be very amusing, I think, to see how well that is tolerated. But it's also very necessary, right? Because one of the aspects that you have when women are in that situation is they feel isolated, they feel alone, they don't feel like they have any other options. They're really grappling with despair, right? I mean, it's really at its root, this is despair. There's, there's just a sense of hopelessness. And it's important, I think, for them to see that there are other options. Now, if they choose still to abort, you can only do so much, right? But sure. But at least having that presence there really shows that there are other options. And I think that this is going to make, and the best part of this, of course, is that it's going to make Elizabeth Warren very, very angry with you, Mark. I hope that you're prepared for that.
Pray for us. Yeah.
Well, we're praying for you anyway, but yeah.
Thank you. No, it's interesting because, you mentioned earlier, accusations of bait and switch and things like that. And, we make it very clear, we will never financially profit from any decision that you make, and there, you can always go right back to this facility. They'll take your money anytime that, people reschedule there all the time. But at the very least, we're here to just make sure that you're making an informed decision for the woman. And so many times women who find themselves in that situation, they're not the ones out rallying for, abortion. They're in a situation they feel like they have no choice. They feel like they have no option. They feel like the society has created this dichotomy where I have to choose between being a mother and achieving my goals. And that's where we're partnering with Guiding Star Project to really bring in this idea of comprehensive women's healthcare to say, you can, this is a normal, natural part of your body that you should not have to reject and destroy as a woman. You should be able to embrace this, and we will help you. We will help you for free. They're going to charge you $1,000 for it. We'll even pay your rent. We're going to be here for you with parenting classes, doulas, lactation support, help through childbirth, everything about what this means to embrace this really beautiful and essential function as being a woman.
Well, where can people find out more about what you're doing, about what's going to be happening today, as we're going to be airing this thing on Tuesday? Where can people go to find more about that?
Yeah, a couple of places. Our main website is www.southwest.life. That's all spelled out, southwest.life. And that's our main website. And then for this particular event, we have an event page at newfrontline.org, because this is really what we're seeing happen in New Mexico is our state is really becoming the new front line of post-Roe America. The new front line of the pro-life movement. They are flocking here as this, completely unregulated up to the moment of delivery. And we're just completely getting overrun. And so we have to take a stand. And we're seeing pro-lifers from Texas, from Mississippi, joining us, from other states, from Arizona coming in to say this is really even beyond a statewide issue. This is something that we now can't just pat ourselves on the back and say, well, abortion's not happening in Texas anymore, because they're all just driving through El Paso, across the state line now and coming to New Mexico. So there's still work to do. And we still, just like after, I always point out, the Supreme Court doesn't have a good track record in the Dred Scott case, right? They were the ones that said, quote, a Negro is not a human being. And even when they later corrected themselves, some states resisted and still stuck to this, old antiquated mentality, even up until the 1960s. And that's what's happened again. 50 years ago, the Roe versus Wade said the same thing, that, quote, the word person does not refer to the unborn. And now we see New Mexico as one of these states that is resisting and staying with this old antiquated idea that, women have to have abortion in order to be successful. And we're saying that, we have 50 years of advancements in the field of women's healthcare that show us that abortion is not necessary for women and they deserve better.
All right. Well, Mark Cavaliere, thank you so much for being with us, and good luck.
Thank you.
And especially good luck with Senator Warren. She's probably ringing you on line too, man.
I'd love to have the conversation. We'll see.
There you go. All right. Thanks again, Mark Cavaliere, and stay tuned for a little bit more from the Ed Morrissey Show coming up next. All right, welcome back. On Tuesdays, we always talk to Andrew Malcolm, the Prince of Twitter, the regent of redstate.com. He's at AH Malcolm on Twitter. And of course, redstate.com is where he's the regent of redstate.com. So there you go. Andrew, welcome back. Always great to talk to you on Tuesdays.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's good to be had.
Nicely done. I want to talk to you about we're going to start with your thing on Donald Trump, because this is, of course, sort of the thing that's been percolating. You're calling your VIP column over at redstate.com on Donald Trump. Ask the questions. Can he do it again, and will he try? And I think there's a third question is, if he does, when? Because there was talk that he was going to make an announcement after Independence Day. Now he's going to make an announcement after Labor Day. Either one of those two things would be really bad for the Republican Party in the midterms, right?
Yeah, absolutely bad. But, Donald Trump has always been more about Donald Trump than the Republican Party. He adopted the party rather than the other way around.
Right.
And they enjoyed, well, they benefited from 4 years. What it would do is hand the Democrats the great eminence grise of Donald Trump coming back, which would really help their turnout in the fall. And Republicans, I think, were really enjoying months of depressing news for Democrats, and hoping that would turn down the turnout and enable them to maybe scratch some into their coffers some seats that might be marginal for them, for Republicans normally. So, but I don't know for sure. I don't have any inside information, but this is kind of classic Donald Trump Celebrity Apprentice, which is we're going to tease you with something today, and that'll get you talking for next week. And then next week, you'll get half an answer, but there'll be another tease for the next one, and so on. So this is the showman, and it gets him in the news, although it's vacation time, so I'm not sure that a lot of Americans are paying a whole lot of attention. And he doesn't have the footprint that he used to when he was on Twitter and Facebook.
And I think that there's another issue here too. And you're right. I agree with you. You're right about the fact that this really does hand Democrats an issue that they want to have, but they can't right now, which is that to put Donald Trump on the ballot so they can run against Donald Trump, and he's not on the ballot. And so, and not formally even a candidate yet. So they could talk about it. And I'm not even sure that it's going to necessarily mean that they're going to talk about it more, because they're already talking about it. But what it will do is it will make it a salient point among voters, and might generate more turnout, right? Than Democrats would otherwise have gotten with the economic news as bad as it is, right?
Right. And another argument against it, which obviously Donald Trump is not talking about, is that there's a whole bunch of rules that come down on him the minute he announces as a candidate. And he had at the beginning of this year like 120 million war chest. I think it's down some now, but he's fundraising like crazy and merchandising like crazy, and that money he could not touch for his campaign. So that goes out the window. I'm sure he's using it for his rallies, for his staff research, and which is all perfectly legitimate. But the minute he says, I'm running for president, boom, there's a whole bunch of rules and regulations that come down on him.
Yeah, the FEC stuff becomes kind of onerous at that point, right? And
so why do it so early? It would be just to get in the conversation again.
Yeah, and I think that it would show actually a bit of desperation, because I think that the perception here is that Donald Trump is losing ground among Republicans. Now, I don't know how true that is. I mean, we're seeing polls. There's a poll that came out of Florida today that showed in a Florida primary, Ron DeSantis would get 61% of the vote and Donald Trump would get 39% if it was just head to head. I don't think it's going to be head to head either. You're going to have other Republicans in there. Glenn Youngkin might get into this race. Doug Ducey might get into this race. Greg Abbott might get into this race. Plus Tim Scott and Josh Hawley, Tom Cotton, those sorts of folks inside the Beltway, and so you have a real potential here of splitting the non-Trump vote in a manner that happened actually the same thing basically 8 years earlier in the Republican primary.
Yep.
But I think the fact that you're seeing in head-to-head matches that Donald Trump is behind in his home state, his newly adopted home state of Florida. That's not a good sign. And so I think that if he's going to make that kind of move, that might be the reason why, to see if he can force some other people out, including DeSantis. But DeSantis isn't going anywhere. DeSantis has 2 more years on his, he'll run for re-election in this midterm cycle. And then 2024, he'll have 2 years left on his second term. And that's precisely where he needs to be in order to, make the jump into a presidential cycle. So
so he's not going to say a word about 2024 now.
Nope.
I'm totally focused on being the best governor of Florida could possibly have. Yep.
That's a good point. So I think I think that actually doesn't help Trump a lot to jump in early. And I think it's going to create more resentment about Trump because, again, I think it will be seen within the GOP as a complete ego move at the expense of the party. And it wouldn't be the first time that Donald Trump got accused of doing a complete ego move at the expense of the party.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that that's going to, I don't think that that's going to be very
it also
effective.
Gets his name out there for the fundraising. I mean, look.
You mean just talking about it rather than doing it? Just talking about it.
Talking about it. Yeah. And he's sending out, he and his committees, various committees of his. Sometimes I get 24 or more emails a day from various committees of his. He's selling hats. He's selling Let's Go Brandon pins, club membership, a name on an honorary donor wall, Ultra MAGA membership. Stuff, a dinner with him, a chance to be flown to the next rally. And he's got a program where you can sign up for a donation and get text messages allegedly from him on your phone. And of course, then they'll have your phone number for future pleas for money. And everybody who goes into a rally gives their email and their cell phone number, so that's building up the bank. But you could think that. I know he's got bigger fish to fry, but he's got quite a merchandising operation going.
Yeah, he does. He does.
It's a major operation to get like 24 emails a day going out. And, in the junk mail that you get in your mailbox, they're delighted if they get as much as 2% response. So he's probably building up we don't know what's happened in the first half. Last year, he got, I think it was 65 million and then 51 million in the second half. So it slipped a little bit, which might go to your point about fading. I think his absence is both good and bad for him. I wrote early on when he got banned from Twitter that this could be great because people might forget the animosity they had and the tumult that his constant tweets.
Yeah, the chaos. Yeah.
The chaos that went on and on and on, and people just grew tired of it. And that's part of the reason that Joe Biden, he could knock off at 10 and 11 in the morning because Trump was out there doing 3-4 rallies in 3 or 4 different states and stirring the pot.
Yeah. I mean, it's, yeah, exactly. And the other part of this too is I think what he's afraid of, and the reason why he would want to pull the trigger early on this, is he's afraid that the rise of Ron DeSantis is really giving Republicans a serious option, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the reason why this is important, I was just talking about this with some colleagues today, and I wrote about it about a week ago or so, maybe a little over that, is that there's really three questions for Republicans going into the next primary when it comes to Trump. There's three questions, right? And I'm just putting aside everything else, right? There's three basic questions. One is, do you want a 78-year-old guy at the top of your ticket? Because after what's gone on with Joe Biden, I think age is going to be a huge problem for Trump. Even though Trump's very vital, he's doing the rallies and all that kind of stuff, 78 still 78. And we're seeing what happens when you elect really old people into this office. It can become a problem very quickly. Mm-hmm. And it will happen suddenly. It won't be gradual. It will happen suddenly. And then all of a sudden you've got a real issue on your hands. The second question.
And that could be the excuse for, I really like Trump, but the age thing.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's one excuse. I'm going to give you another one in just a second, but I'll get to the second point. I'll get to the second point before I get to the better excuse. The second point is all the baggage that comes with this, right? And, you've got the January 6th committee hearings, which people are paying attention to, but aren't really considering in terms of their midterm votes. Some of that stuff is going to come up in consideration for the 2024 vote. And it may not necessarily be an issue in the primaries, but it certainly will be in a general election. You'll have a lot of stuff floating around. There'll be a lot of stuff that gets out in the open about texts, and communications between people. And none of that's going to make Trump look very good, even if it's not actionable in terms of legal. These guys aren't really looking for a prosecution.
No, they're looking to poison the well.
They're looking to poison the well, right? And I mean, you can make an argument that there's a patriotic reason for doing that. If you really think this guy is a danger to the Republic, then you want everybody to know just how bad he is. I grant that. I also grant the fact that this is a complete political operation here, and it's probably at least somewhat. What's the right word I'm looking for? It's probably not a great precedent to set to have House committees, explicitly campaigning against a party's potential next nominee in this manner,
or going after a former president.
Going after a former president, which is even
a
second.
Closed.
Yeah, right. So, although it's not, because he's eligible to run again, which brings me to point number 3. and I'm really interested, after reading your column here at redstate.com, I'm really interested in your thoughts on this. And I don't think that this is something that people have really considered a lot yet. And because it's really not time yet to consider it. But after the midterms are over, once we get into the primaries, the GOP primary, pre-battles, right? All the declarations and all that. It's going to dawn on people that Donald Trump's only constitutionally eligible for one more term in office, right? He's already served one full term. He's only constitutionally eligible for one more term after that. After that, term limits apply. He can never be president again. And that means that you're going to be running somebody at the top of a ticket who's 78 years old, who's carrying tons of baggage, and who basically will become a lame duck the moment you elect them. And especially after the first term midterms, when you can bet that Donald Trump's impact on midterm elections will be pretty similar to what it was in 2018.
Yeah.
And normal. It was a normal impact, right? The party that's holding the White House usually loses seats, and Trump did, and basically at the level that you'd expect to see. But he's going to be a lame duck. I mean, especially in the final 2 years, even if everything else goes normally, which it won't, he'll have 2 years, and that's basically it. And then you'll have to have another big intra-party fight over who's the next person in line.
Unless he picks an heir apparent that everybody likes.
But nobody's...
that could be a selling point.
Look, but it almost never happens. That almost never works. I mean, it worked with George H.W. Bush and Ronald Reagan. But then I think the last time it worked prior to that was Herbert Hoover. being picked. I don't even know if he was picked by Coolidge, to be honest with you, because they're really two different kinds of politicians. But I mean, he was as far as I can recall, I'm not even sure. Hoover wasn't even Coolidge's vice president. He was a cabinet member.
He's the last cabinet member to win the presidency. There's only been 3, and the others were early on.
Right. So, I mean, you're getting to a point here where, I mean, you're not getting much out of a Donald Trump nomination at that point in time. You know, in 2016, you could say we're going to get 8 years of Donald Trump. We're going to reset politics, et cetera. Well, we've already done the resetting politics. It didn't hold, unfortunately. And then you had all this baggage, you know, the post-election stuff in 2020 that's going to come back and haunt Republicans if Donald Trump's at the top of the ticket again. And you're not going to get a chance to reset politics, and you're going to get maybe 2 good years out of the guy before he becomes a figurehead again.
And what if he loses?
Oh yeah, what if he loses? We're going to go through all that over again?
No. But what if exactly all that with Trump? But
yeah,
if he loses, then there's a huge vacuum for 4 years.
Yep.
So I think you're right. There's going to be some real challenges in GOP primaries. I mean, Nikki Haley is organizing. I think DeSantis is quietly organizing, traveling around the country, meeting donors and so forth.
Yeah, I'm not even sure it's all that quietly, to be honest with you. He's done a lot of donor stuff. Yeah.
Right. And others, like you mentioned, Tim Scott, Tom Cotton. So they're getting ready, because you can't just decide I'm going to run. You have to organize well in advance. Remember, Elizabeth Warren announced on New Year's Eve, almost 2 years before the election.
Yep.
Now, let's see. I'll go back through my catalog here. John F. Kennedy announced on January 3rd of election year.
Right. Yeah.
So you're what, 10 months out roughly. Bill Clinton announced in October, 13 months before. Obama and Clinton announced in February, 21 months before. George W. Bush announced in July.
But you're missing one. Joe Biden actually announced in January of 2007. Remember? He was one of the earliest ones in the race. Yeah.
Didn't last so long.
No.
George W. Bush announced in July of 99. So you don't, I mean, it's silly politically to announce before the midterms. That's it. Any midterms, any president, any candidate.
I agree.
You're just taking on extra baggage. You don't need it, because if you're not now Trump, of course, is throwing the dice. He's endorsing lots and lots of candidates. And so this midterm is going to be viewed through the prism of how well did Donald Trump do?
Right.
And if his people lose, he's not spending much money. You know, I mean, I think he spent his PAC out of that 120 million. He spent, I think, $1.5 million, and $1 million went to some conservative leadership group that Mark Meadows is involved with. And 350,000 was divided among 65 Republican candidates, which turns out to be not too much money. So he's raising like a candidate, although he can't spend the money as a candidate, but he's not spending like a candidate.
Yeah. I think that Trump basically just is doing fundraising. And I think that at least the people around him are going to say there's no point in announcing prior to the midterms. Because here's the last point I'm going to make on that. And then I want to get to the media credibility thing from Gallup. But the problem with announcing in, say, early September, is that, you're going to get like a 3-day boost on that. And then all of a sudden you're going to have hundreds of millions of dollars in messaging on the midterms that follows after that. That announcement's going to wind up getting buried. It's not going to have any real resonance, because it's first off, it's out of place. And secondly, the midterm is a much more newsy thing. right? It'll be newsy, and media outlets will chew on a Donald Trump announcement for a couple of days. Then they're going to get right back to polls in Georgia and Arizona, and and all these other battleground states and House polls and generic congressional ballot, and
you've taken on the baggage of FEC regulations.
To get pretty much almost nothing at all.
Yeah.
By the way, there's a new CNN poll out while we're talking on Monday afternoon. There's a new CNN poll out. Joe Biden has a 38% job approval rating. Let me tell you where that matches up with other presidents, because Manu Raju at CNN has actually done the footwork on this. For for this at this point in various presidencies, Biden's at 38%, excuse me. Trump was at 39%. Jimmy Carter was at 42%. Ronald Reagan was at 44%. Don't forget this is 82 when we had that second dip of the recession. Bill Clinton was at 44%. Barack Obama was at 50%, and that was just a few months before he got clobbered in a midterm election. Richard Nixon in 1970, 55%. Ike, 54, 62%. George H.W., 69% in 1990, which was probably partly due to the Iraq War, or the war hadn't started yet, but the confrontation had begun at that point in time. Kennedy, 1962, 69%, and of course, then the record holder is George W. Bush. In 2002, because of the 9/11 attacks, was still at 73%. Now it was starting to come back down to reality. And
that midterm was one of three since 1912 in which the incumbent president gained seats.
Yep.
Because of 9/11 there, in 98, Clinton gained because the GOP overreach on Monica, and somebody else. I forget, but it's in my column.
Well, there you go.
Oh, I know. FDR in 34 because of the Depression.
Because of the Depression and the New Deal's slow response, that sort of thing. Yep. By the way, 69% of respondents in the CNN poll disapprove of Joe Biden's handling of the economy.
69.
That's up from 54% in December. This is what this is Democrats disapproving. I mean, this is the final phase of the confidence crisis cascade when your own party starts abandoning you. That's what this looks like. Yeah.
And they deserve it, because remember, before the 2020 election, 70% said they were voting against Donald Trump. Well, that means you're not really examining Joe Biden, because you've decided Joe Biden's my guy de facto.
Right.
And so you're going to elect a guy that really didn't get the thorough vetting and examination. I mean, seriously, if you think about it, this is somebody who was campaigning from his basement on partial days. And even then, he was talking to Iowa voters about the infrastructure in Ohio. Ohio, it's four letters. It's pretty much the same. And that was when he did the pony dog soldier thing. And it's dog pony soldier.
Well, there you go.
So they didn't really look at him, but they could have known that they were getting into some age senility problems here. But they didn't want to see it because they were so desperate. And the same thing happened with Jimmy Carter. I mean, hello, I voted against Gerald Ford because of the Nixon pardon, and didn't really examine Jimmy Carter closely. And look what I gave the country.
Well, to be fair, there was a whole lot of people who were doing that right along with you, and it wasn't a very close election. So I would say that your vote probably wasn't what tipped the balance there.
You don't think it was crucial?
I don't. Well, we got a couple minutes left, and I know that you haven't had a chance to really peruse this, but Gallup further expanded on its findings from a couple of weeks ago on institutional trust. They took a look specifically at the data set for media trust. And I think to no one's great surprise, other than the media itself, Andrew, it turns out that media distrust is basically a nonpartisan issue, or bipartisan, or nonpartisan is probably correct. 8% of Republicans have trust in the media, 12% of independents have trust in the media, and now we find out that 35% of Democrats have trust in the media. This is an outlier position in all three parties. Now, for different reasons, I'll grant you, but nobody has much trust in the media, and the overall number is the worst it's ever been in Gallup. And as a result, Katie Tour went on, and this report came out on Sunday, and I think it was later in Sunday that Katie Tour came out with a video clip in which she's saying, well, I think you can do this job and be effective, but if people, don't find you credible, then I'm not even sure, what's the point of doing it. And
because of your big paying contract, maybe.
Yeah, I think for her, you're getting paid to do the job. Yeah, you're getting paid to do a job. Maybe you should do it well. Not all reporters get paid well, but to me, this is an issue of editors, right? This is an issue of editors who are asking for and promoting narratives over just straight factual reporting.
Yeah.
And that to me is what the issue here is. So I don't even really have a specific issue with, beat reporters. And they're fine reporters, by the way. There are people who are actually doing this job, right? And you can find them. And sometimes they work for outlets that overall you have problems with, but they're still fine reporters, and you can.
That's true.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right.
But
and it's crucial because our democracy requires a fairly common thread of information for us to make our own individual decisions. And there are going to be various decisions and disagreements and arguments and what have you. But newspapers have a bigger impact. They're, I think, in many ways dying, print newspapers. But you drive, you commute in the morning, and you're driving, and you hear all the radio guys talking. Well, that's right off the front page of the local newspaper. They're not making this stuff up on their own. They're not digging it up. They're getting calls. President Biden wears boxer shorts. What do you think about that? And it's all from some feature in the newspaper. It all comes right out of the media, and we need a strong media. Now, we don't have it now, and the media's role to me should be not telling us what to think through a narrative, biased narrative, but telling us what to think about.
Right.
And that's where the importance comes in. They select certain stories and they cover them, and hopefully honestly, which they're not doing all the time now. And I'm not sure, Ed, honestly, I spent most of my life in that media, and I'm not sure how you rebuild trust. If you think about cheating in a marriage, how do you rebuild that? You can't undo it. You can't undo all this biased narrative. The fact that Obama lied about you can keep your doctor and your health plan 37 times in speeches, but that never made a fact check,
Yep.
Donald Trump had 10,000 alleged untruths. But you know what? We're busy now, and they can't do it to Joe Biden except on a scattershot basis. So
and it's there was an article today or late yesterday from Peter Baker at the New York Times, and Peter Baker's a pretty good reporter, and it was over this conflict over whether Biden actually challenged Mohammed bin Salman over the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, and Biden says, I told him I thought he did it. And I made it clear that, we weren't going to put up with, And Peter Baker says, Peter Baker stepped through this. And how did he put it? I got to look this up because it was an extremely polite way of saying that, is an extremely polite way, a polite translation of the way I normally describe, Joe Biden, which is 20 pounds of bullshit in a 10-pound bag. But, You probably can't put that in the New York Times. And I will grant you probably shouldn't write that in the New York Times, right? I can write that at hot air. It's not appropriate for the New York Times. And I agree with that. But this is how he described Joe Biden. Mr. Biden is by nature a storyteller with a penchant for embellishment.
Penchant for embellishment.
Or penchant, if you want to get into the French pronunciation, the penchant for embellishment. Oh. Yeah, that's certainly one way of putting it.
The president who had a long career as an over-the-road truck driver, we're supposed to believe him. So who are you going to believe? A shady monarch or a crooked president?
A serial fabulist. This guy makes
serial fabulist.
This guy couldn't tell this guy couldn't tell the truth if it paid him to do it. I mean, this is the guy who plagiarized Neil Kinnock's speeches and Neil Kinnock's family history for his presidential campaign speeches. He lied about his educational history. 1987. This all happened in 1987. This is not new. Joe Biden.
But there is new. Last month, he lied to Annapolis saying he got accepted to the Naval Academy.
Over and over again.
The year he graduated from wherever he graduated. I mean, it's just, So who are you going to believe? Well, not him.
Well, Baker says, this story sounds very familiar. It fits a pattern. And there was the story of meeting Putin and saying, I'm looking into your eyes and I don't think you have a soul. And Baker says, others present at the time had no memory of that specific exchange. It's because it didn't happen. It's nonsense. He said the same.
Sorry. But in Saudi Arabia, they called the reporter back who did an interview. They called him back so that one of the guys in the meeting between the Crown Prince and Biden could say, I don't remember him raising that issue.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't think the Saudis are good at telling the truth either. But honestly, I think that in a contest, I'd just root for both of these guys to lose.
To get caught.
Yeah. I mean, it's nonsense. Anyway. All right. So that's one reason why we have a media credibility crisis here. It's because the media didn't want to draw the connecting lines between the dots prior to the election. They still don't. Right. He's a storyteller with a penchant for embellishment. Penchant.
Doesn't that make it? I mean, the covering.
Sacre bleu. That's what I say. Sacre bleu.
It's embarrassing, people who are normally good, and I don't know whether I think it's them, but it could be their editors.
I'm going to guess in Peter Baker's case, it's probably the editor, but I don't know. I don't know that. What I do know is that the product stinks. And that's what the problem is that everybody, Democrats, Republicans, and independents are all saying the product stinks.
Yep. And we don't believe it.
No.
Well, okay. There's cynicism and skepticism, and the media has gone into, and the readers have gone into cynicism.
Yep.
They're all crooks. They all lie. And I don't know how you overcome that in the long run. I really don't.
You know how you overcome it, Andrew?
No.
With the jokes of the week.
Yes. Okay. Here we go. We got the jokes. So these are all replays. David Letterman said the All-Star baseball game. Did you watch that? Boy, I tell you, nothing is more exciting than watching overpaid players give 50%. And that's true. And it's the same in the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, very much true in the Pro Bowl.
Fallon replay. A new poll finds 54% of Florida voters think the country is on the wrong track under Obama, while the rest of Florida voters still think Teddy Roosevelt is president. I like that one. Fallon replay. The blackout, I guess they had one at the time in New York. The blackout even affected some weddings. At the Plaza Hotel, the lights went off right before a couple exchanged vows. The bride had just said, God, if this is a mistake, please give me a sign. And he may have.
And he may have, Andrew. Or it might have become just after, let anyone who, what's that line that, I mean, nobody uses it in weddings anymore. Let anyone who,
If anyone,
if anyone objects, whatever it is.
Has reason to challenge this
marriage. Whatever it is. It's maybe she was dating an electrician. Maybe she was dating an electrician. A very jealous electrician.
And when the lights came on, she was gone.
Maybe she was married to a magician. Or maybe she was dating a magician. Who knows?
Yeah.
All right, exactly. Andrew. Well, now that's just speculative and narrative journalism. We don't do that here. We're just about the facts and our opinions. So
that's right.
And if you want more of that, you can go to redstate.com, where Andrew is the regent of redstate.com, and you can find out more on Twitter. Andrew is the prince of Twitter at AHMalcolm.
That's
and
right.
We'll do this all again next week.
Yes, sir, we will. Thanks, everybody. Edward, I will see you later.
I will see you later, Andrew, and stay tuned for more from the Ed Morrissey Show coming up next. Thank you for watching and listening to the Ed Morrissey Show podcast. Be sure to subscribe at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube to get alerted as soon as new episodes get published. You can support the Ed Morrissey Show and Hot Air's VIP reporting by becoming a VIP member, too. Visit hotairvip.com and use the promo code SAVEAMERICA, all one word, for 40% off your membership. Choose VIP Gold and gain membership to access to all of the Town Hall sites. Thanks again for watching and listening.